So we are live. We should be going out on Facebook and to YouTube, and everything should be okay. I'm sure you guys will let me know if the sound is working okay. I'm just getting my notifications being pushed out now. Let's just have a look. There we go. So I'm just going to talk and waffle until I see that we've definitely got. Should be okay. I'm sure we have got sound, and not only that, we have our first comment, which goes to Richard Cole. You've beat Natasha to it. Natasha Stanley is here as well. Second comment tonight, Natasha. You are slacking. Richard Cole, you're good. Fantastic. Richard is another Canadian hypnotist is here supporting the channel, and Richard is a great guy as well. And tonight we have a fantastic guest as well. He's been on the he's been in the comment section before. He's a really great hypnotist, and we've got some great stories to talk to you about. Don't forget, guys, as well, if you want to ask any questions whatsoever, just bang them in the comment section as well. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're on YouTube or on Facebook, we will see them and bring them up as well. And it's always great to get that engagement with them and support these presenters. Natasha says, you wouldn't have had a show tonight if it wasn't for me. Give me a break. Natasha she is an absolute diamond, and yes, she is an absolute star as well. Roy Miller is here as well. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Roy. I hope you are well. So without further ado, please find the applause emoji on your keyboard, and please bang that applause out for tonight's guest. It's Alex Champ, and he's going to appear there he is.
Hey, everybody.
Fantastic.
Good evening, good day, whatever time it's zone, whatever zone you're in. Hi.
Yes. Yeah, we're evening. Your afternoon?
We are just over 3 p.m., just after 3 p.m., roughly Toronto time.
Fantastic. We've got a couple of hellos as well. Karen Taylor says hello. Darren Fraser says hello. Or Roy Miller says good evening, everyone. Natasha Stanley, Richard Cole. Everybody is here. The gang's all here. Fantastic. So, yes. Oh, Karen Louise is here as well. You're getting lots of applause coming through. That is good. That is good. See, they're a friendly bunch tonight. That's what you've got to hope for. One of the things that's always weird about going live, and it's only happened once, and by saying it, I'm jinxing it. But I have no control over the comment section. And there was somebody that was using, let's say, interesting language and very strong political views, but using numbers and letters in order to say the words that would instantly get the feed cut down. And I always had to be quick to try and get on that. So we've not had that, and hopefully we won't have that. So anyway, Alex, you were in Canada. How are things there at the moment with the whole COVID situation?
Actually, my part of Canada is pretty good. I'm an hour north of Toronto, and things are relatively well. We just, as of yesterday, everybody has to show proof before you get to a restaurant or the gym or whatever. The government's ahead of its time. We want to show proof now, but a month from today or a month from yesterday, that's when they're going to have the app ready, which I expect it to be pretty messed up knowing our government. Yeah. On the west coast of Canada, on the other side, one of the premiers is looking at possibly losing his job. He's pretty well made a mess of things.
Wow. I mean, I don't think it's just your government. I think it's governments. Yeah. So that's going to be interesting with the app. So will people have to show that app to be going into venues and shows and stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're like I said, I've heard of the Quebec. My relatives, I've got some in Quebec, and the app they have there is pretty silly. They scan the QR code. It shows green or red, but there's no name associated with it.
Oh.
But you have to show ID. So it's pretty easily fake. So they're working on fixing that. Hopefully, because our medical cards that we need when you go to the hospital have a picture on it.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why they can't have an app that shows the picture that's on file and has green or not green.
Yeah.
But they're working on it, and in standard government fashion, I expect that's how it's going to go.
Yes. Yes. And no doubt there'll be issues. I know here in the UK there was talk of a COVID passport. And then we had people protesting about privacy rights and all sorts of stuff. So now they're not looking like they're doing that. But it will be interesting to how that has an impact on people going out to shows, if they've got to do that extra step in order to get their COVID passport. I know when I looked at it here for the UK, you could scan an app and then it gave you a QR code which lasted for 28 days, and then after that you had to go through the process again, which seems like it was hard enough before COVID to get bums on seats and to get people through the door at shows. So adding an extra barrier in, I don't know how that will go. So tell us about before COVID, before the COVID hit. How were you? How were the shows? How were things?
Well, as you can imagine, everything was awesome. I guess we'll call it the days of innocence.
Yes.
Yeah. Where, your worst concern was somebody would give you cooties, which doesn't exist. No, things were great. The shows were regular. I was doing, several a month, sometimes several a week.
Nice.
And COVID hit, and I've done once since COVID.
Wow.
And that was last month. It was one company, and everybody was confirmed that they had their shots. And it was like the good old days. Nobody had a mask on. I totally forgot there was a pandemic during the whole show. It was great. That was over a month ago. Nobody has reported that they've been to the hospital, that somebody snuck by and faked it. So it was like the good old days.
Oh,
I'm looking forward to that coming back.
Yeah. I've done a couple of shows, and the first couple, I'm not going to lie, they were terrible. Just to kind of get back into that whole routine again. But yeah, it's nice to see audiences are back to normal-ish. I thought there might be a reluctance for people to volunteer to be on stage, but that seems okay. So hopefully, like you said, fingers crossed, it's the new good old days.
Yeah, the volunteers, like I said, the show I just did last month, I had to get 20 more chairs up to this, like around the stage area. It was just a mass panic to get up there, which is the kind of shows we all love.
Brilliant.
So, and that's all part of the intro. If you don't introduce yourself properly, you don't get them psyched up properly, you don't get them in the right mindset, sometimes you're lucky to fill 10 chairs. But if you've got the right speech, you're fighting them off, which is exactly what we want.
Yeah.
Because I always tell people, I'm not the entertainer. I'm the guy holding the stick, and my volunteers are the orchestra.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the problem is, if the orchestra, the orchestra blows it, the guy holding the stick is responsible.
Yes.
So
yeah,
it's about the closest analogy I can get of what it's like being a hypnotist. But you got to wave that stick properly, and I got to get everybody psyched properly.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about how you wave your stick. And that's not just hypnosis.
Okay, I'm not going there.
Yeah. You mentioned then about the importance about that first part when you go out, about getting that rapport, that pre-talk. I mean, that, every hypnotist watching this will know that literally that's where the show is won or lost. And when I see people in the forums saying that they've had issues with certain shows, 9 times out of 10, you can break it down to something that was not done or not done in a pre-talk. So yeah, it is so important.
And a lot of people, for those that are not hypnotists that are online, the pre-talk is everything you say from the minute you turn on that mic that starts to get the audience into a state of mind that you need them to be in, or you may or may not get enough people, either whether volunteered or not, get them into a state that you can actually perform the show. So the pre-talk is, people say, well, as soon as they're sitting on the stage and you start playing the music in the background, that's when they start to become hypnotized. Not even close. I've done some shows where while I was giving my pre-talk, I've had people in the audience completely go into trance right then and there.
Yeah.
And that's how it should be done. I mean, I don't always get that kind of audience where I can, get them into trance before I even ask for volunteers. But when you can, and everything's just running smooth, that's the show that you just want to do over and over.
So there's that sense of relief when that does happen. You're getting paid that night. It's always going to be a good night.
Yeah, and another comparison, if you don't mind if I jump in here, is like you've got the other type of entertainer that people get hired are similar. At least when some of the websites I get hired through, they're looking for comedians, and that is not the same. I mean, comedian he's got the same jokes whether they work or whether they not, but most of the time they're funny. They're funny. It's not dependent on the audience; it's depending on the comedian. For a hypnotist, everything is audience based, and every night, every show is completely different.
Yeah, I've had, and it's weird. Sometimes I've had great audiences with terrible volunteers, and I've had great volunteers with terrible audiences. And you just kind of think this, this is, you're dealing with so many variables that you got to make sure that pre-talk's nailed on. I mean, I don't know about you, but my pre-talk is different depending on that audience as well. For me, it's not a one size fits all. You've got to try and read the room a little bit and get that rapport with them.
Oh, absolutely. Read the room, read the client, corporate client versus, one of the first shows I did was for some nurses. It was kind of like a gift from their boss to give them a de-stressor. Nice. There was 20 nurses. A show when you've got 20 people, nobody, and they were all was like, nope, I'm not volunteering. Nobody wanted to volunteer. And it was one of the better shows I ever had, because it said, I know you don't want to volunteer for a show. So as a thank you for all the work you do, I'm just going to give you some relaxation techniques. I got 18 out of 20 of them under in the relaxation technique, kept 8, did a show for the other 12.
Brilliant.
I tricked them,
yeah.
but it worked. And those that went under, I call them under, those that went into trance, I make sure they remember after the show, immediately after. So they weren't upset at all. They thought it was the best thing ever.
Yeah. Interesting comment that you said there. I loved it. One thing that I love about hypnotists, and especially because of the forums, is, and I was doing a training thing with another hypnotist a couple of weeks ago, and I kept dropping in the odd word just to wind him up, but it's like subjects and under, and we've all learned now that we know what they mean. It's all the same thing, but as hypnotists, whenever we say the phrase, sometimes we kind of stop and change it. But yeah, no, it's right. It's for me, I always kind of say they're under hypnosis. I know they're not under hypnosis, but for me, I think it's an easier term for people to understand.
And that's exactly why I'm so used to using it, because I'm dealing with the non-hypnotist people. When I explain, exactly, if I tell them I'll go into trance, they don't think of it the way we know it is. So, but if I say to them, oh, when I get all the volunteers under, then the show really kicks off. They know what I mean, and that's the point. It's not whether you use the right term or not when you're dealing with the client. It's whether the client understands what you're trying to say.
Yes. All the words we use, like you said in that pre-talk, are metaphors. They're all there in order to get them on stage and understand the process. It's not necessarily the correct grammatical terms, the right syntax, but yeah, absolutely. Getting ahead, tell us about your first exposure to hypnosis, whether that was the first stage show that you saw or volunteered at. How did you discover hypnosis?
Oh, Peter Ravine.
Wow.
I forget he used to have a title at the end. If anybody out there remembers it, feel free to chime in.
Oh, someone must know.
But anyway, Peter Ravine he'd been around since the 50s, maybe even sooner. And he's long passed away. He used to do a mentalist show and the hypnotist show. And I was so amazed. It was his farewell tour. First hypnotist I ever seen. It was the second last night of his farewell tour. And I was I don't even have a word to describe how amazed I was. So I contacted the box office to see if there was any tickets for the last night, the next night. And they said, no, we're sold out. But if you get in line and somebody cancels, I got in line 8 hours early. I was there 6 hours before anybody else showed up. And there was only 2 tickets that became available.
Wow.
So, and what really made it extra special was he did the same thing and it was not even close to the same show. And that's when I realized it was something I definitely wanted to learn how to do. And the kicker for me was at the end of the show, he gave everybody what he called a hypnotic gift. You'll sleep better, you'll this, you're that, things to improve their life. Yeah. And at the end of my show, I do something in honor of him, but I don't specify what their gift is. I let their subconscious mind pick whatever it is they want. Brilliant. And I do a little physical thing that they have to do to show me that they know what it is they picked. So I'm not guessing that they're ready or not. Yeah. And so they have to raise the right. I'll actually say it here. So I get them to raise their right hand and get whatever it is that they want to add, remove, or improve in their life. And when it gets into their right hand, then their hand will raise parallel to the ground. And then whatever it is that's holding them back, put that in their left hand. And then that raises their left hand. And then what I get them to do is when the left and the right communicate, the short version is their hands come together, their issues are resolved, and then they go back into deep trance again. Nice. And people have contacted me left and right, the results, and like, how did you know what I needed? I had no idea. You didn't say a word. I just saw your hands that you were ready, and you did what you did.
Yeah.
And so I do that in honor of Peter, and it's also you get to help people.
Yeah. And it's nice. It's nice to give them that gift for volunteering, for being the stars of the show. Very quickly, Richard says the Impossibilist.
Boy, that's it. Thanks, Rich.
I knew someone would know it. So yeah, so you saw the first show, and like it's great what you said then about doing the same show but it being a different show. That is what I love about what we do. You know, the foundations are always there, but it's the extra ingredients that the personalities that the volunteers bring with them that changes the dynamics of the show.
Well, yeah, you could tell two different people to be aliens, and there'd be two totally different types of aliens.
Yes, yeah. I remember once I gave someone a suggestion. I've done it for years that you can see through the tips of your fingers. And it was a lead on from an alien skit. So then I would have people kind of looking around and picking the nose and having a look around this. And then one time, yeah. And then one time, this girl was just sat there and she just had this sheer look of horror and she was looking at her hands. And I've kind of gone, what's the matter? And she's like, I can see through my fingers. And I'm like, huh? And then she thought she was becoming invisible. And it's like, oh, how weird to take that suggestion that way. But it shows how literal they can be sometimes.
Oh, that's the great thing about the difference in human beings. We're all so different. One suggestion is completely different for everybody else.
Yeah, yeah. So you've seen Ravine. He's made an impression on you. Tell us about your first show. How did you prepare for that? How did that happen? What was it like?
It was scary.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as scary because it wasn't for a paid client. So at the time, and I was up until COVID, volunteering at a retirement home. And every year, this was my first year with this retirement home, every year they would do some kind of anything to thank appreciation for the volunteers. And the lady who was our volunteer coordinator knew I was also had done some stage training as a hypnotist. And she said, would you like to put on a show? I said, oh yeah, I'd love to. You know, you got to get in there. You got to get your practices in.
Yeah.
And I found out after the show that the biggest skeptic going in saying, oh, it's crap and people fake it and it's not real. I mean, every hypnotist has heard it all.
Yeah.
He was the star of the show. The guy that was the biggest skeptic was amazing.
Yeah.
Probably to this day, probably about the fifth best I've ever had. This guy was deep and he was doing stuff and it was a blast. And I remember my internal voice, because I sure as heck didn't, I made sure the audience, didn't think that I didn't know what I was doing and I was amazed this stuff worked. But in my head, I remember saying, holy crap.
Yeah.
And just from there, that moment, as soon as I got him to do something and everybody else, but him specifically, I went, okay. And then I just went full blast and away we went.
Yeah.
But until that moment, it was like a little bit of shaking inside. Never let them see you sweat.
I think that's one of the reasons why I always think hypnotherapists should at least do some stage hypnosis training, because with therapy, there's lots of outs where you can kind of hide behind it, whether it's working the way you want it to work or not. On stage, you've got that. When I say this is going to happen. And when that happens, like you said, that first time, there is that oh shit moment where you're like, wow. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I did my hypnotherapy training first, a couple of years before I actually did my stage training, and my success rate was good. But after I did my stage training and the other techniques I learned, and the confidence, but mostly a little bit of both, part confidence, part technique. Hypnotherapy success rate and depth of trance just exponentially grew. Yeah. So yes, absolutely. If you want to be a stage hypnotist, that's great. Do your training. But if you want to be a hypnotherapist, even if you don't want to do stage training, pay the extra bucks and do your stage training as well, because you're going to learn something that, the lady that taught me as a hypnotherapist is one of the best in North America. She really is. I mean, if you get on the cover of Oprah magazine twice, you know you're good.
Yeah.
I'll even give her a shout out to Debbie Papadakis. But the stuff that she was teaching was as amazing as it was. I learned some deepening techniques doing the stage stuff that just doesn't compare.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's a great point you said there about confidence. I think intent and confidence are probably the two biggest tools that make hypnosis as successful as it is. Having techniques and tools help maintain that, but having that confidence that when you look in somebody's eyes and go, this is going to happen, I think they pick up on that confidence, and it helps so much more. Talking about confidence, we all have them, but challenging shows. Tell us your most challenging show you've ever had, and kind of what takeaways, what did you learn from it?
I'd like to share two of them, actually.
Absolutely.
One of my first shows that I thought was going to end up being a bomb was it was a Christmas party, and the two closest tables to where the stage area was were, well, they were drunk. They were really drunk. And drunk people tend to be loud.
Yeah.
So thank God I had two speakers that were bookending the volunteers, and the people that were close to the speakers didn't hear the drunks. And I heard later from those that were in the center that never went in and had to leave the stage that, yeah, all they could hear was the drunks calling their name. Hey, you look like this. And well, I'm not going to use foul language, but let's just say they were heckling them while I was trying to get them into trance.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, sometimes those that have done the shows, we don't enjoy when there's only a couple people that go into trance here, but when you can concentrate on, you know, 1, 2, or 3, it can be a heck of an awesome show.
Yeah.
The one show that didn't go very well at all, and I learned a lot from it, was I was doing it for a friend of mine's birthday party, and he's not originally from Canada, and everybody that was there was not originally from Canada. Literally translation. None of them had English as their primary language.
Yeah.
So, but they understood English. So they understood the instructions I was giving them and all that stuff, and they followed it very well. And I learned that your subconscious mind does not translate, your conscious mind does. So when I was giving them stuff that involved that they had to translate, and once they were into trance, their conscious mind had to do the translation, and they all came out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, I mean, he loved it because it turned into an hour worth of Q&A on hypnosis. Yeah. And he thought that, and he'd seen my show before and thought, you know what, the Q&A was just as good or better.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I contacted my instructor, said, look, what do you do in that situation? He says, go a lot slower and do your best to not involve anything that they really have to translate. Just get them to do things.
Yeah. Don't
get them to think.
Yes. There are my fellow is Bulgarian, and it's difficult. Yeah, absolutely, Karen. I spoke about it before on this show. I did a cruise ship, and I think 80% of the passengers were retired Germans, and every person that came on stage kind of went, "Sprechen Sie Deutsch? Sprechen Sie Deutsch?" I'm like,
ouch.
No.
What's that? 9?
Yeah. I know one lady that was with them, she went, I'll translate for these for you if you want. And I'm like, oh, brilliant. She was the one person that went into trance. And it's like, that's no good. But yeah, it's this. I think you've got to have those shows because you realize that when it doesn't go the way that it plans, you know, you don't die. You know, the world doesn't beat you up. And like you said, you got a positive from it. You turned it into a Q&A. And the client actually got more benefit from that as well. And I think having those tools in your toolbox definitely helps.
You got to know what you're talking about. Not just know how to do it, but you got to know the material. But you got to know how it works, not just what makes it work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you said you did hypnotherapy training first. What was your background before you got into hypnosis? It'd be interesting. I know you served in the military.
I was in the Navy I wore the uniform for 25 years.
Oh, well. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate that. We had mentioned that we had talked slightly earlier than this. Yeah, I only almost died twice, so that's not too bad.
Wow, That's good going. I've died on stage a few times.
It's actually, I'm not sure which would feel worse. The dying on stage isn't so pleasant either.
Yeah, there's no honor to dying on stage. There's no salutes for that. It's just you just get an awkward round of applause. Richard Cole says, "Yay, Canadian Navy." Brilliant.
Thanks, Richard. I agree with you.
We
may be small, but we know what we're doing.
Do you think that brought skills with it that has benefited you as a hypnotist? I mean, I know a couple of UK hypnotists that have military and police background, and I think that benefits their delivery, their sense of authority on stage. Do you think there was something you brought with you from that previous career?
I think the authority on stage was the nail on the head that you just hit. I mean, if you were only in the military for a couple of years, you never really hit a leadership role, then no, that's not going to do any good. But if you advance to a leadership role, which I, more or less did, I've had at one point I had 1,000 people that I was responsible for directly. So
wow.
I'd say a leadership role was there. And yes, if you can't command authority, then you're not going to last in this industry very long at all. Oh my God. I could talk about that forever, but yes, you have to command the stage. You have to take control of your volunteers. Like right off the bat, when your volunteers sit down and, they always sit beside their buddies.
Yep.
I always start off with the joke, if you're sitting beside somebody you slept with or want to sleep with, change seats. Yeah. And then you always get the two guys to look at each other and one of them will move just as a joke. But those are the buddies, you don't want them sitting beside each other having a chat while you're trying to do your induction. And you have to command that authority, and you have to command when the audience is starting to get rowdy. Because sometimes, you have to say, look, I need you to be quiet for a good 10, 15 minutes. I'll give you the sign. You could be the louder you are, the more I want you to be loud. But I need you to be quiet. And if you just like, your little Minnie Mouse, like, please be quiet, it's not going to fly.
I think audiences are like sharks. They can smell fear.
Yes, they do.
If you're on stage, and English audiences love an underdog, but if you're on stage and you lose them, they pounce. Audiences love that. So yeah, you've got to deliver that authority, and
especially if there's alcohol flowing in the audience.
Yeah, and I think you've got to do it, and you've got to be congruent with it. It's not just about shouting at them.
No, it's a fine line. It's a big but narrow fine line between commanding the audience and coming across as some guy telling them what to do.
Yeah.
And if you've got to balance that, or you're going to bomb again.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get rehired because they look at you as a bully.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I love hecklers, but I like to make an example of them early on and then shut them up, because the show is about the volunteers. It's not about the guy in the audience that wants to be funny. And again, with hecklers, if you give them too much time, they think it's a double act. And so, I do like to make an example and then move on from them. What are Canadian audiences like? I mean, do you get hecklers over there? Is that something that you get?
Alcohol aside, because you get that no matter what if people are drunk. Because I've done a few shows with drunks, as I mentioned. But that wasn't the only one. No, actually, I mean, Canadians are known for politeness and for good reason. I mean, sure, you've got, your outside, nobody's all the same, but majority of the Canadian audiences are very respectful. And as like I said just a few moments ago, if you ask them in the proper way, like, this is important, I'm here to give you a good show. And I always add the joke, but the truth, I've already been paid. So if you want to mess this up, that's fine for me. I get home earlier. But if you want to have the time of your life that you're never going to forget as long as you live, then I need 15 minutes of your respect.
Yeah.
And in a Canadian audience, those lines work.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's spot on. I do something similar, but I tell them, listen, if you don't behave, this is going to be the shortest show you've ever seen in your entire life. So, yeah. So we've heard about your challenging show. Sorry, Natasha Stanley says, Yorkshire humour wouldn't go down well in Canada then. Yes, kind of Northern English. A lot of the comedians that did the circuit, a lot of the working men's clubs here, there was always an expectation to give the act a hard time. So you really got to grab them straight away. So we've talked about your challenging show. Do you have a show that is your standout show, the one that you remember, the one that you'll put in your book, the one that you kind of go, I've made it,
One of my, I'd say the favorite show I ever did was on a military base. And for all the hypnotists out there, if you've ever done a show for the military, let's just say if you haven't, you need to.
Yeah.
If you want an easy show, get the military.
Yeah.
I mean, high schools are the same, but you've got to watch, how you do the show. You got to keep it super clean. I did one high school once where I used the finger gun for sleep.
Yeah.
And the principal ripped me a new one. We don't use guns around here. It was a finger. Yeah, we can't. So, I learned that lesson. But when you're dealing with the military, though I don't do a dirty show, you can get pretty darn close to that line. Oh, and they're begging you to go over the line, but I don't.
No.
Because what it is, it's an authoritative thing. So high school students, military students, same thing. They're in an atmosphere where they need to do what they're told. And you want to put somebody into trance, they have to do what they're told. And I did this one military show where I was doing one of my favorite things to do is putting the males through 9 months of pregnancy in a very short period of time. And I did that on a fly off the cuff of my whatever one show, and it went so well. I swear this guy went from thin to looking 9 months pregnant. I don't know how his body did it, but it was awesome. So I did this in the military and on this military show, and I had this one girl that was beside him. I said, okay, you're going to help him. And oh my gosh, she took over. If you check out my YouTube videos, you'll find her in there. I still to this day don't know what a prim is. Maybe some of the ladies on there know, but she was coaching him like, oh my God, it was, I beg you, go to my YouTube channel, Alex. Just look up Alex Champ, Master Hypnotist on YouTube, and you'll see the purplish background because the stage lights, kind of like the back behind you now, actually.
Nice.
Grant, but it was hilarious what she did, and the whole show. And then there was another one. I think it was the same show. There was a guy I used to sail with, and he used to make my life miserable. I did not like this man, but I didn't let him know. Let's be professional. But when he came on stage to volunteer, he didn't remember he was a bully to me when he outranked me. So I said to myself, I'm going to make him suffer. Yeah. And he was so hilarious. It was just my urge to make him suffer went away with how funny he was. Brilliant. He was to this day still the best alien I've ever had.
Brilliant.
And then I had some people in the audience holler back out in alien, and he just, oh, and he just answered them back like he knew what they were saying. Best shows ever. So my military show was the best.
Brilliant. When talk about military shows, it's one of the things I always do when I get my volunteers on stage and I'm moving them around. I'm looking for the polished shoes and I'm looking for the posture. Because especially at British military, you can tell if they've been in the armed forces by the shoes and the posture. And it's a great way of kind of preempting that person's been in the military. And it's a great guaranteed rapid induction then, which kind of makes it go all brilliant. Yeah, I think my first military show, I wasn't prepared for how fast it happens. And back then I was doing you're on a hot sunny beach and the temperature's 80 degrees in the shade. And I'm not lying, like I turned my back on them for a second. And when I turned back round again, half of them were near enough naked. And it's like, what is going on here? They were hot, so the clothes were coming off. So yeah, military shows, you got to be quick with them.
Yeah, they talk about, there's a lot of hypnotists and there's a talk about rapid induction. The military person was the fastest I ever had. It was under 8 seconds. She was completely in a total deep trance in 8 seconds. Wow. And then I found out later she was military and then explained everything. Yeah. 8 seconds, I think, is the record I'll never break.
Yeah, yeah. Natasha Stanley says, ooh, naked soldiers. There we go.
Natasha, keep your mind out of the gutter.
Yeah, bless her. It's one of the things about the kind of the business of shows as well. here in the UK, we get a lot of people that are happy to get stage time, so they go out for different prices. But I mean, do you have, you don't have to say your price, but do you have a set structure? How do you bill your show? Is it a one price fits all and then travel? Is it different show prices for different venues, different clients? How do you work it?
I have several pay structures I use. There's the free one, which is if it's a charity that I support. I mean, there's some charities out there, I'll be blunt about it, I don't believe in them.
Yeah.
When the CEO is making $200,000-$300,000, I'm sorry, I'm not giving you a free show.
Yeah.
You can afford to pay a bunch of people more than I make in my day job, not going to happen. If it's a house party where they're all related, I like doing those shows, so I give them a pretty decent price.
Yeah. Because
it's more fun for me, and when everybody knows everybody else, the show goes better, it goes easier, and you see a lot on the shows where people go, well, like I talked about at the beginning of this, where people think it's fake or somebody's faking it. But when it's your best friend or your cousin or your brother or somebody you know very well, and you go, there's no way they would ever do that, they know it's real, and it makes it a lot more enjoyable. And then basically there's two other categories, either your standard company or a large corporation. And the thing with large corporations is, and I've learned this, and it makes me sad to think it, but if you don't ask for a large amount of money to do the show, they think your quality isn't worth it. So let's say you want to give them a show for $600 Canadian as a rough price, which is still pretty low. They're going to think you suck.
Yeah.
Because you're not charging enough. But giving them the exact same show and you tell them you'll do it for $1,800, they'll hire you.
Yep. People associate price with value and quality, which is so important. And because sometimes, like exactly what you said then, if you go in cheap in order to try and get the gig, a quality booker doesn't want a cheap show, because that affects how they're seen by their clients. So yeah, I always try and get as much information as I can before I give a client a price, because I want to give them the show that they want. There's like you said, there's a different show for doing a house party to doing a big stage. So I want to make sure that they get the show that they want. And I ask them where the venue is. And by finding out what venue they're at, for me, it's a good indicator of what kind of budget they've got and what we can do for them. But a lot of people, kind of go, this is the price you should charge, and then apply that to everybody.
And some of the guys that are people, the hypnotists I've seen, is the quick response is, well, find out what their budget is. And I don't agree with that. And I've tried it. It doesn't always work. Oh, my budget is $3,000. Okay, well, I'll do it for $3,000, or I'll do it for $2,900.
Yeah.
But, you might, I always said I'd rather get a whole bunch of $1 bills than the occasional 100.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm charging $1 for the show, but it's the general philosophy of it all, right? I'd rather do a whole bunch of shows at a decent rate than get the occasional show for a huge rate. Yeah. In the end, my bank account's bigger, which, I don't do it for the money, honestly. And you got me on video. I'm saying it now, staring at the camera. I do not do this for the money. I do it because I love it.
Yes.
I always tell them, you're paying to get entertained. I'm getting paid to see the show.
Yeah. Yeah,
because I'm just the guy waving the stick.
Yeah. Natasha says a great point as well. They always love a discount, so always go high so you can come down. Yeah, very true. Very true. It's weird because, I got into stage hypnosis from a point of almost a fear of public speaking. So I always say that the money is there for the challenging shows and for the before the show. But the actual time on stage, I'm not saying I would pay to do it, but I probably would. There's no better feeling than that moment when you're on stage and those people are doing kind of what they should be doing and you're entertaining them.
And that's why you and I get along.
Yeah, you've got to get that client's got to be invested in it as well. So there we go. There you're giving them a gift and they owe you. Yes. So you've been doing this a while. So if you were to give yourself a tip, or a young hypnotist that's just starting to get out there on the road, if you were to give yourself a golden nugget, a piece of advice, what would it be?
2 pieces of advice, if you don't mind if I double that number.
Absolutely.
One, do a whole bunch of shows for charities for free. Don't do it for companies for free, ever. Never, 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 never. But for charities, fundraisers, you've got, somebody that needs medication or whatever, needs medical money, or whether it's the Heart and Stroke Foundation or cancer, it doesn't matter, a charity. And even if it's one where the CEO charges $200 or makes $200,000 a year, do your charity shows, get comfortable before you're going to charge anybody a dime.
Yeah.
And in Canadian funds, as my instructor said, if I do a show for less than $500, unless it's a worthy cause, he's going to punch me in the face. Now, he didn't mean that literally, or maybe he did, but he lives too far away to come get me. But still, I agree with his philosophy, because if you don't charge enough, then you devaluate everybody else that's in the business.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing shows for $150 for some company or whatever, that's what, like 100 pounds for all of you over on the other side of the pond, as we like to say. You're basically making some person who does it for a living, most likely, and he's not going to be able to do it for a living anymore.
Yeah.
And you're devaluating what it really is. I mean, you spent money, you spent time, you spent education. My training may have been a short period of time, but I've got over 1,000 hours of personal education in this, and that has value.
Yeah.
It's not the hour and a half of my time doing the show and the travel time. It's the time and effort I am putting into not just doing, learning how to do it, doing my shows, but then I record all my shows on camera and I go over them later and I review, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? Or was it not me? Maybe it was somebody else. Constantly fine tuning. Yeah. Because I'm not a perfectionist, but I'm never going to be happy until I get every show is like that military show.
Yeah. And it's exactly what you said then. It's about the time you've invested in yourself to get these skills to do a good job, and that reinventing yourself, reinvesting that time, reevaluating your shows, the trainings, the conferences, the workshops, the books, the DVD, all of these things add value to your show. And that has to reflect in the budget that you push out there. So yeah, absolutely.
Just don't put yourself out there cheap when you don't know, when you haven't got the experience of really being able to put on a good show, because all it takes is one company that you've blown a show because you didn't really know what you were doing. And now that company has all kinds of friends and all their distributors and all the other companies out there. And word spreads pretty quick though. Don't ever hire a hypnotist show for your Christmas parties or your event, because hypnotist shows suck.
Yeah.
Don't be that guy that trashes it for all of us.
And that's so important, because weirdly, singers, magicians, jugglers, all of these acts all have a sense of identity. With hypnotists, no matter how unique we try and make ourselves, people still put us all in the same pot. If you do a hypnosis show and it doesn't work, and I approach that venue for whatever reason and I go, I can do my show, they're going to go, hypnotists don't work here. They think we're all the same. The amount of time I get people that come up to me and go, oh, were you working in Ibiza in 1992? I remember you then. And I'm like, no. They kind of look at us as being the hypnotist. And because the way we bill ourselves sometimes as the world's fastest, the world's quickest, the world's this, the world's that, the world's best. And if you bill yourself that way and you can't deliver those goods, then they're going to see it that we paid this much for the guy that's the world's best, or girl, and it didn't work. And so that's that. It kills the venue, it kills the booker.
Right.
Yeah.
So for the new person, the new people out there, until you're having success after success after success, don't even ask for money yet. And don't do it for companies, because even if you do a company for free, they're never going to want to pay anybody again, because they're going to wait for the next person to give it to them for free. Yeah. Charities all day long. Companies, they've got to pay. Plus, they get a tax deduction. What do they care?
Exactly. And like you said earlier, they value that as well, because, if they're paying for it, they associate a value with it. And Natasha said, was that another hint for me?
Come on, Natasha, you got to get your stage training. I think you'd be one of the best.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I know we spoke about this, but I always talk about books, and if you were to recommend any books, what would those be? But tell us about that.
He's smiling because he knows my answer. I have not read any hypnotist books. Do I have them? Yes. Have I cracked the pages? No. I mean, Erickson is, he's one of the Bible guys out there. He knows he knew what he was talking about. But all my experience and training has all been, I've done reading, but not specific books. Articles here, articles there, watching other guys doing their shows. I've probably seen a good 35, 40 other hypnotists. Love going to Vegas. I love going to Vegas to watch the guys like Mark Savard do his thing. And, everybody else, when I go to a hypnotist show, I'm not watching the entertainment. I'm watching the technique.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's always been like that ever since I saw Peter Ravine. So I'm studying how others do it, even if for the YouTube videos they post. Everybody's watching how the volunteers react when he gives a suggestion. I'm listening and paying attention to his body language, his tone, the music in the background, if there's any audio in the background, absolutely every little tiny detail of how he's giving that suggestion. It's not just the words. It's like, does he touch him on the shoulders? He touching them with his, little pinky on the top of the forehead. I'm watching all that technique, and a lot of my studying has been done from that.
Yeah.
And once again, the practicing, reviewing my own videos. It's me and books. It's not that books aren't a good idea. They're a great idea.
Yeah.
But it's just not my thing.
Just to do a shameless plug, I'll just pop this here for a second. There we go. That will bring up a link in the comment section for some books. I'll see.
Oh no, they're good, especially that I've heard great things about the Bible, and not the Bible that you read on Sunday.
Yeah, you can't see it here. I'll show. I generally have some stage hypnotist books at the back here, but this week I've added this one. And that's actually a book by Christopher Caress. He wrote he's a cruise ship stage hypnotist here in the UK, but he travels the world. But he's just put out a children's book, which is quite cool.
Michael Johns has got some really great books out there too. I know he doesn't perform anymore, and God, I miss his stage shows. To me, he is out of all the what I've seen, I will continue to say it. He is the best I've ever seen on stage.
Yeah.
But he's put out some books, and sadly, to my laziness, I haven't read them yet, but they are definitely on my list of to-dos. First, they'll be the first books I go to.
And a genuinely nice guy as well, which in this industry that's filled with egos, Michael is up there. He is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. But then I suppose he doesn't have to prove anything.
Well, we weren't friends before. I met him after a show. I talked to him, and we built a rapport through that. So that speaks to how what a nice guy is. Oh, I'm looking at, I'm in the stage hypnosis kind of way. I didn't say, I was this and that.
Yeah.
And well, hey, look, you need any tips? You need any hints? Need any help? You'd reach out to me. And he was always there when I reached out to him. I've called him on his phone, he answers and he talks.
Yeah. And
guy's amazing. He's a saint.
Yeah. Fantastic. It's one of what I believe is one of the most important things about your training, doing stage stuff. And you touched on it then as well, about reviewing your shows back and looking at them and not looking for the funny bits, looking for the bits that you can tweak and slightly improve. I think videoing your show and watching it back is a really great way of improving and getting proper stage training from guys that are doing what you want to do. And then that way you kind of, I know people out there, that do stage training that have never done shows. And there's not, there's some great trainers doing that. But I think it is important to find someone that's doing it the way you like to do it and learn from them. So
exactly. Research the person you're going to train from.
Yeah.
Before I went to my training, I said, I don't care what you charge me. Well, I did, I don't want to pay $100,000.
Yeah.
But I want to see one of your shows first to make sure you're doing the kind of show I want to do.
Yeah. And
that you actually have a successful show. Anybody can make a website that says great things.
Yeah.
I vowed from the get-go, as ex-Navy as I am, I didn't want to ever do a dirty show.
Yeah.
As much as I would love to, in the back of the sailor side of me, the retired professional side of me says, no way.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to give anybody the handshake orgasm and all that silly stuff, as funny as it is.
Yeah.
I always tell, as part of my pre-talk, to allow the audience to relax. As I says, I want to laugh. I want the audience to laugh with you, not at you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So when I found somebody that knew what he was doing, he'd been in the business. He actually used to be a magician. He also had a magic shop. You know, and then he's been doing stage shows for years, big corporate clients. So he knew what he was doing and knew the entertainment business. There's more to just, and this is something I learned on the training. No, once you've got your hypnotherapy training, learning how to do stage training is not just how to deepen your volunteers. It's how to run the business, how to do the business, how to advertise yourself, how to write contracts, how to set up the sound system, lighting, everything. There's so much more to do. And once you learn all that stuff, your confidence level goes way higher, and then you're actually a better performer. So learning it off of YouTube, don't do it.
Having an understanding of how the sound works and how that affects the depth of the volunteers on stage. Again, there's all the little things, the stagecraft, that make a massive difference. So yeah,
if I didn't have those stage monitors, I would have lost everybody when that drunken table went crazy. But the stage monitors I had helped drown out some of the, to some of the volunteers, the drunks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was part of my training, to know that that's going to happen. How to deal when you get somebody with an abreaction. You don't learn that from a book as well, or from let me rephrase that. You don't learn that from watching a YouTube video on how to hypnotize people. But I mean, there was one time where I put somebody in that 9 months of pregnancy and he was freaking out. Now, nobody in the audience knew he was freaking out, but I saw it. You could see it in his eyes, and I could see his hands were shaking in a not so pleasant way. And I quickly resolved the issue, but without proper training, I would have looked pretty bad by the end of that show, that I just destroyed a human being in front of all his coworkers.
Yeah. Darren Fraser's just put up a comment here now. It says he's recently found out that the biggest insurance company in the US will no longer insure hypnotists doing adult material, so many won't be getting renewed. Wow. I mean, it's where the world is at the moment. We do live in a very woke PC kind of society. So yeah, and I think it's once the insurance companies get involved, that steers that course really.
Well, we're having the same problem in Canada, but it's for any hypnotist. When I first started, I was through the DJ Association. As long as you played any music at all, you were covered under the insurance. I mean, if you don't have any music in your as a hypnotist show, then it's not much of a show. At least even the intro has got to be music or something. And then they dropped all hypnotists, this one company. So if I want hypnosis, so stage hypnosis insurance in Canada now is more than my house and my car combined.
Yeah.
Here before it was like $300 a year, a big deal.
Yeah. Here in the UK, we had, it's slightly better now, but maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, the price of public liability insurance for stage hypnotists was ridiculous. It's not too bad now, even though I just got my renewal through a couple of months ago, and they've put the price up. And it's kind of like, how have you put the price up? We've been in a pandemic. No cases have been brought forward, but it's insurance companies. That's what they're doing.
So what some of the hypnotists out there, what you can do is you can make the client responsible for the insurance. And if they in writing say we don't want insurance, then say sign here that you accept all responsibility, and then that is your insurance.
Yeah. Here in the UK, we have the 1952 Hypnotism Act. So it's a bone of there's an area that causes lots of debate. It's not worth the paper it's written on.
I've heard of it.
Yeah. However, it's one of those that if you've not got insurance and you've not applied under the 52 Act, odds are it's not the council that will cause you problems. It's not the booker that will cause you problems. It's generally another hypnotist that isn't working that night that will ring the council and cause you problems. So for what it is an administrative ball ache, but it's worth doing it. But yeah, if you don't have insurance, then you can't get a license here in the UK.
Well, luckily we're not that strict.
Oh, it is crazy. So what's next for you? What plans do you have? You're just coming out of COVID now. Shows are starting to come back in. How are things looking? What's your next big project?
I've got about 7 different events that are prepaid, ready to go, that have been on hold since COVID. And people are starting to book their Christmas parties already. September is the month where the smart companies are starting to book.
Yeah.
And I'm also pushing, hey, now you want to book now. But we're still officially a pandemic. As any nurse or medical person will tell you, COVID's not going anywhere. Yeah. It's just a matter of keeping it under control. So in my contracts now, I'm writing in them that if for some reason the show needs to be canceled, it'll be put on hold. You're not getting your money back.
Yeah.
Well, it's just your deposit anyway. I don't get prepaid other than the deposit, but I will redate as far forward as we need to go, and you have in writing. So it's all about making the customer happy, but you still want to have that show. So right now, I can predict it as much as anybody can predict it, which is not at all.
Yeah. Sorry, going back onto the insurance, Darren Fraser's kind of said he's doing a high school this weekend, and they require the vendor's performance to have $1 million minimum liability, and the school district must be listed as additionally insured. Many schools are going that way. Wow.
Then let the school pay your $2,000 worth of insurance and go for
it. yeah.
Because I'm not paying $2,000 for insurance just to get a $800 show.
Yeah, exactly.
I can do math pretty well, and that seems like a no-brainer. But if you I have a friend of mine. Her name, actually, if you look up Unstoppable Tracy, she's one of the most amazing people you'll ever meet. Nothing to do with hypnotists, but she's what she'll do is she'll give a discount to companies for her motivational speaking if they will book or talk to and get her booked through other companies. So she went to Europe to do one company and for a week, and she ended up staying there for several months and did for like 20, 30 companies.
Oh, nice.
So on that same philosophy as Unstoppable Tracy does it, if a school wants you to have that insurance, say, look, you get me set up with 4, 5, 6 other schools, then insurance won't be a problem because then you're covered. And then you sneak your price up, $100 per or whatever, and they paid for it whether they realized it or not, but it's only fair.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex, if you were to give the final words, your advice to the people watching, what would they be?
Don't become a stage hypnotist if it's not something that you don't think you're going to love. I'm not saying you have to love it already, but do it for the love of it, not for the money of it.
Yeah.
Because there are people out there, and I will keep them nameless, that do it for the money.
Yeah.
And it affects the show. It affects how people look at us. And it's not what you want. And you're not going to have any fun. But if you're like me and like some of the other ones, do it because you love it. Because we get paid to go to the show. Others pay us to make the show.
Yeah. Fantastic. Great words there. Guys, please do check out Alex's social media. Definitely go check out his YouTube as well. I'm going straight to watch that video straight after this as well, because it sounds hilarious. Check out his social media. Check out his website as well. Show him lots of love and support, and smash that like button as well for Alex as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, or even if you're watching it on Facebook, get yourself over to YouTube and please do subscribe. Each week we bring you an expert stage hypnosis performer. That sounds like it should be the name of a group. There we go. Oh, Natasha Stanley says, Mercy. She's gone all French on you. There you go. I won't even try.
Yes, I speak French. Thanks, Nat.
Oh, there you go. Fantastic.
I do my shows in bilingual, but I try to stick to English.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for joining us this week. And guys, do show Alex some love as well. And take care and good night.
Thanks, everybody, for coming and for watching.